Welcome back, chumps. I'm the Chump Change Trader, and this is the Small Account Challenge, where I take $2,000 and try to make it fly farther than Boeing can. I'm just kidding. Today's April 21st, 2023. It's a Friday. Happy weekend, everybody. And of course, we have a good milestone to really celebrate today. The first position that I've ever put on is pretty much expired worthless, and for most people that would sound like, oh, that's a bad thing, but as an options premium seller, that's exactly what you're hoping to look for. But before we get into that, let's just jump straight into sort of what was going on with the market, and it was flat, and I mean flat. If you look over on the left here, the Qs or the NASDAQ basically was flat. S&P 500, Dow Jones, Russell 2000s, they were all pretty much grinding sideways. And when I see and hear grinding sideways, it's like music into my ears. So at that point, I had no doubt in my mind that my positions were pretty much just going to keep printing money, because that's what we're hoping. We're hoping that the position just simply doesn't move any further with an iron condor and just let it grind sideways and let theta decay or time decay work in our favor. And so you'll notice that the position here is still on. It's still literally sitting here. Why is that? Well, the position actually doesn't close until 8 p.m. Eastern time, and we still have about, let's say, 11 minutes to go. And then that position will be taken away, and then if any assignment were to be made, if any of the positions were to be assigned, they will then get assigned on Saturday at 11 a.m. But let's just take a quick look as to where we're at, and we should see that dotted line pretty much just match that thick green profit bar, as we have accumulated the full 86.04 in this position. And there was no chance in hell that I was going to let that position ever go out of that range. So that's kind of the sort of like the sigh of relief, and at the same time the satisfaction that you can get as an options seller, especially when you have set your parameters correct. Yeah, this position will just disappear from the account by the time 8 p.m. rolls through. And then from there it will just not exist here, and I've already collected the cash as credit, and there's nothing really to sort of do anything there. In terms of the second iron condor that I created, which was more on the skew to the upside, yeah, that one we may have to monitor very closely, primarily because of the fact that if this trend continues to the downside, we may have to close the positions early and collect probably a earlier premium, or just simply let it take its course and potentially wait for a pullback to the upside. Do I foresee any kind of upside movements? Well, everything that I've shared in this channel so far, that kind of says no, right? All the macro data kind of lean towards the negative side, towards kind of the headwinds that are facing towards the long term. And I think, as I mentioned before, this was sort of the last hurrah, the last ditch effort for any kind of profit taking or bullish sentiment up until sort of what's going to happen in the next following weeks. I know for a fact that the recession isn't here this early, and it's not going to happen for a while, and there may be some stagnations in between. Hell, there may be some bull runs occasionally, especially during the summertime, where data from travel, consumer consumption is going to see an uptick, and then that could create some sort of bullish sentiment in the market. The market's going to do what the market's going to do. But in terms of where the economy is at, the market cannot ignore what the economy is doing forever. So that's the thing you just kind of have to, at least from my experience, doing this for well over a decade, that you can see sort of the headlines and the data that pretty much paints a grim picture. And if the market's just doing the complete opposite of it, you can basically use that opportunity to set up a trap or set up a position for yourself to either catch a top or a bottom, depending on sort of how you play it. So what's the plan for this upcoming week? Well, there's not much outside of just earnings that are coming through for the upcoming week. And so I will assume that the earnings aren't going to be as impressive as the earnings that had just happened for this week. So if that trend continues, then we can continue to see sort of more grinding sideways or downside movement. And for potentially, I may have to make some adjustments on this position here. Perhaps maybe I'm going to do a call vertical this time around, similar to what I did before, to kind of buffer or lower the amount of downside loss potential on this side. But I think I'll do something different for this position coming around. I may, depending on how many days that takes, I may actually decide to roll this iron condor by basically stripping it, from its guts and being able to roll the inner sides. But that's going to net. Oh, I'm an idiot. I'm not going to have the buying potential or buying power for that kind of move. So it's either take the position off or introduce another position. But since we are at kind of like sitting around a little less than 50% of our buying power here, our options buying power, I may decide not to do that. Just because the vertical, as we've already seen it before, was, not necessarily a bad thing, but it also ate up some buying power just to sort of pad a current position. If I can just simply take this position off for a profit and just call it a day and save myself the 28 days of waiting in agony, I might as well do that and then just reopen something that sort of fits sort of the current narrative right now. Much similar to how I have this particular iron condor down here. But this one was so fat and juicy because I'm risking one to actually less than one to make one on this particular part. So sometimes the gods of premium are in your favor, and you're able to sort of sweep up a lot of premium from all the volatility and work it into your favor. So hopefully I can catch more of these. These will basically be a staple to the account until we reach that milestone of making it to I would say, we're actually getting close to reaching a milestone of $3,000 in cash. And so that's actually another thing that I wanted to mention. Sorry to go on a tangent, but the account value is currently at $2,456, yet the amount of cash that's in there is much higher. And why is that? It's because we receive a credit for each of the positions that we've put on, right? This is a sell side iron condor where we are receiving a credit, and we received the $292.34 instantaneously. That means they put $292.38 into my pocket the moment I open this position. Now, once that happens, there's going to be positive and positions, each of the individual contracts themselves moving up and moving down. And ultimately, what's going to happen is that it's going to reflect this particular dotted line right here as a net. This dotted line, your profit curve, is the net of what's going on at this current moment. So as we wait for theta decay to kick in, that credit we receive sits there in cash, but it's not like I can just go ahead and, it could, but I choose not to just assume that the account value, or rather where the account is currently, is exactly what the cash value that I've received. So until all of these positions right here expire worthless, then I cannot assume that this $2,833 and 37 cents is, actually how much profit that I've netted. I have to just go with the account value and just stick with that. So even though it may look like we're approaching to almost 50% more, on where we started from pretty much a month ago, or maybe even less, I forget. It feels so, it feels like time has been flying by. But for the most part, we'll go with the account value at the current moment and really just make sure that each position is going to net us something in the positive territory, right? So the idea is that we're using, positions that are not going to be very large size amounts of our buying power. We're going to do as many as we can while maintaining the same parameters, the same rules that we set for ourselves. I'm not going to exceed 75% of our buying power, right? And so that's where I'm sort of keeping it, a little less than 50% in case an opportunity arises that I can take advantage of. And then, of course, that eventually will help, boost sort of the rate of speed that we're going to be moving at. And I feel like we're moving at a pretty decent pace considering that we have one position here that's about a month, a little less than a month out, and then another position that's a little less than 2 months out. So I'm creating this waterfall, this cascade of different positions that ultimately, as the market is unraveling and really deciding to figure out what direction it wants to go, I'm going to take advantage of this kind of weird, awkward, indecisiveness that the market's deciding to just sort of grind and chop away at. And, at the end of the day, if I'm making $292 here for that position, and for this one, the original one, I basically made $207, right? For I think it was like a little over a month out. Those are decent rates of return relative to the buying power, to the risk also that I'm providing, right? It's a closer to one-ish, lose one to make one kind of deal. And I feel 100% comfortable doing that until the account reaches to a point where I can start doing, a little bit more crazier, I wouldn't say crazier, but more undefined risks. And undefined risk strategies definitely help in terms of being able to, exercise higher rates of return. But sadly, it just requires more capital to do so. And of course, the whole challenge is that how does the everyday person, or not everyday, but the average person who wants to get into this and has really small amount of chump change, right, can be able to sort of grow their account. Because the percentage growth, right, is the most important part of this. Because I can do any of these same positions, exactly the same things, except add a 2 to this position, add a 3 or a 4 or a 5, and that basically just scales the same exact thing that I'm doing, but I'm able to I'm able to make more leverage off of the multiple different positions that I would put out just by simply doubling, tripling, quadrupling the number of positions out. Of course, the iron condor isn't the only trick in the book. I would much prefer, if I had a larger account, to do what's called a strangle, which just simply looks like this. Just 2 positions right here. A short put and a short call that ultimately looks very similar to the iron condor, except the only difference is that you're not restricted by the bought positions where it eats up all of your liquidity here. But the only downside is, as you notice, that those nice defined areas that the iron condor have, where my maximum pain is going to be 292.66 on either side, right? risk one to lose one. The difference is that it's infinite. If the stock keeps moving left, the stock keeps moving right, you have infinite loss on both ends, which is why it's called an undefined risk strategy, which basically means you have infinite risk, and that's where the cost basis is going to be more expensive for the brokerage to let you do that kind of position. Of course, the actual profit potential is ultimately $1,403, right, for the same 28-day period. And that, of course, is what attracts me to that kind of level of strategy. And the difference is that now that you have an undefined risk strategy, how do you manage it when it's not moving into your favor is the next sort of question or the next sort of phase of where your options trading experience really comes into play to really take advantage of a strangle versus a iron condor. So at some point in time, we will then get to that, hopefully sooner than later. But for the time being, I'm going to be trading within my means. I'm going to be trading within the account's means. But it's just nice to know that when the account does grow to a certain size, or if I use another account as an example, then I can show sort of what is a next level kind of strategy that has the same kind of spirit as what this strangle is doing currently right here. So hope you guys sort of enjoyed sort of where we're at, enjoyed the celebration of this milestone. If you guys can do me a favor, click on the like and subscribe and the bell notification. It would mean a lot to me. And let's keep growing. Take care.